Hey everyone, welcome back to the Summer of Atlassian. Today we're going to be meeting with Shawn Doyle from Release Team. Shawn, thank you very much for coming on.
You're very welcome. Yeah.
So Shawn, if you're probably new to my community, very well established on the Jira Life, but most of the viewers here probably don't know who you are. And I think that's a big miss because on the Jira Life, you're such a big, huge part of our lives, especially mine.
Well, behind the scenes, anyway.
Behind the scenes. But still probably one of our number one fans. And so first I want to start off with saying thank you.
Oh, you're
And then yeah, we'll jump into it. So I did want to spend a few minutes here to get to know you a little bit better and introduce you to Ape Tech, the big main channel that not a lot of people in the Jira Life get to see because it's such a segregated experience here. But I wanted to kind of kick things off with just maybe let's hear your origin story. I know that when we were in San Francisco a few months ago, you were kind of sharing that with me. So how did you create Release Team and what was the whole thought process behind that?
Oh, okay. So it goes a little bit further than creating Release Team, but I had done a number of I created a number of software development tool groups in different companies throughout the 90s. I was like at, I think, the first company for about 5 years, and then 3 years, and then another 3 years with another company. But basically, each company had me go in and set up a tool administration group. I started off doing system administrating in the early 90s. And no one wanted to administrate the software development tools, and they were coming in, and a lead developer would try to maintain them for a little while, and it just became too much for them, and so they tried to pawn it off on the system administrators, and I unfortunately volunteered to take on one, and then I started gathering these software development tools over the years. I started out with an issue tracking system, and which basically that's what Jira is today: issue tracking / project management. But it was one of the very first tools I started out with. I'd name drop the tool, but nobody in your audience would remember the name of the tool.
It's interesting because I started my career when I was at Boeing. We had an internal issue tracking system that was just internally in homegrown, just because there wasn't anything, at least back then, available.
I think back then for you and me are very different.
Very different. So my back then would have been 2010-ish timeframe.
Yeah, I'm talking late 80s, early 90s. So I will name the name drop the tool. Some people remember it. Back then it was called DDTS.
I've never heard of this tool.
Yeah, and you're probably better off for it. It was actually a really good tool in the time, but at the time, but you needed to really know what you're doing to be able to maintain it. There was a lot of back end programming that you had to do. And
I came in the the Rally era and the Microsoft Team Foundation server area.
Yeah.
So those were the tool, like issue tracking tools that were available when I was coming into the IT scene.
Yeah, those are the tools we used to argue against when we were promoting IBM Rational tools. But over the years throughout the companies that I worked for, creating and staffing these tool teams, eventually IBM Rational and HP Quality Center were the two tools that we were maintaining the most, and a little bit of BMC Remedy. But then in '99. I decided that I could do this as a consultant. I didn't need to be full time at one of these companies, and I seemed to really only enjoy it for the first 3 years, and then it was time to move on to another company. So I founded Release Team in '99, mainly around IBM Rational tools, which at the time were ClearCase and ClearQuest. And ClearQuest, again,
words that are not in my vocabulary for good reason.
Yeah, they're still out there in the wild. They're not very large in the wild. We continually get pulled back into those organizations to help them out.
They switched over to RTC or something like that. No, at one
they
point
tried to, and
that
that
didn't
yeah,
Jazz.
don't get
I
me on
remember
that.
there was a
Yeah,
I
don't
remember
get
there
me
was
on
a
that
Jazz
soapbox.
RTC or something like that.
I was never on that soapbox, but one of my key employees was, and you'll talk to him and you can pick on him about RTC.
Yeah, when I was at Boeing, there was a big battle between TFS and RTC. There
Mhm.
were these two teams. Well, there was the Clear Case Clear Quest team, and then there was the TFS team. And the Clear Case Clear Quest team was trying to desperately get into RTC to just survive.
Yeah.
And then TFS, and then I ended up changing it. And I think Boeing went safe, and we all went to version 1.
Oh yeah, version 1. Yeah, we encounter that occasionally as well. I'd much rather avoid it. I'm not a
Yeah,
big version 1 fan, and I was never a huge Rally fan either. Although so many of my IBM friends ended up working for Rally for quite a while until CA bought them.
totally unrelated. But your thoughts on doors?
I don't think doors will ever go away.
You don't
Um,
think so? Is there? Do you
no.
see a worthy component to doors or a modern tool for doors, or a doors equivalent?
All right. Well, I'll get in trouble for saying this for a lot of my doors friends.
It
I
is
don't.
recorded, so if we want, we can cut it out.
I don't know. I get in trouble with IBM all the time. In fact, it'll be refreshing for IBM to be mad at me again. It's been years since they have been. But yeah, doors. I don't think it ever really truly had its place. It's requirements management. It was way overpowered. It did things that I don't think really was necessary. Now, people in the automotive industry, maybe in the defense industry, would argue against that because that's where it's clearly still being used heavily.
Oh
I don't
yeah,
think it'll ever
it was
go
a
away
centerpiece. Yeah.
because the way these projects are bid, especially in the Department of Defense, doors works very well. So they can do, feature burn down and that's how they get paid and all that. And something like a Jira just doesn't have all the bells and whistles that doors has. And I'm glad it doesn't. I would say with enough add-ons, you could probably get Jira to do exactly what doors does. But I don't think I would want it to. But yeah, I don't think doors is going anywhere. There's been no major improvement in doors in decades. They'll trick you by someone will call up and ask you, hey, we'd like to upgrade the doors next gen. Well, Doors Next Gen came out with the big RTC push, or the big Jazz push,
Yes,
and that's
that would have been
15,
15.
yeah,
Yeah, 15
15
years
years
ago.
ago. So the latest major improvement in Doors was about 15 years ago. Now they'll tell you that there's been plenty of bug fixes and upgrades, but most of it's security patches, supporting new OSs, things like that. But yeah, we do some doors consulting. It's few and far between. It's not our expertise. We typically stay in things that are truly software development or DevOps, and doors is I would say DevOps adjacent. It's not truly in your typical DevOps stack.
So then, where and how did Atlassian get folded into release team?
Oh, so
'Cause now
we
now Atlassian kind of seems like a black sheep in your at least
no,
in your
no, no.
portfolio.
So Atlassian came on my radar around the end of 2003, beginning of 2004. So it was fairly early on in the in the Jira journey, I guess, that we started doing Atlassian type work. So my first Atlassian conference, I think, was 2006 or 2007. That I went to the one of the summits in a warehouse outside of or just inside San Francisco. We had a number of friendly competitor consulting companies that we partnered with. And at the time, one of them made a strong left turn from IBM to Atlassian. And they had a really famous, and I'm sure you can Google this, anti-Clear Case rant on this blog. And they did that about the same time they all jumped directly into Atlassian consulting. And so I started putting my toe in the waters and seeing, okay, because IBM was pushing the Jazz products. I kind of saw that as the end of IBM Rational. And that, I looked at the Jazz products and found that they had no merit. they're overcomplicated and too fragile. And now, sometimes I say that about a lot of the SaaS tools that we play with these days. But at the time, everything was on-prem. You could always open up the back end, like pop open the hood, see how things were working, adjust stuff, as needed for your customers. And that's what I felt we lost when we went to the Jazz products. When Jira came along, Jira was completely, pretty much open. It still is. So, any marketplace developer can jump in and tweak what they need tweaked and create a product or an add-on for it. And so that's what attracted me to Jira. And then the other products just came over time. Confluence and eventually Stash and then Bitbucket and all those. But that's how we got into Atlassian. Atlassian's like our biggest partner, but they're not our only partner. But we probably do about 70%, maybe a little north of 70% of our consulting efforts have something to do with Atlassian products.
I would not have guessed that. And we probably got it started with the wrong question, because we probably should have kicked off with, what exactly does Release Team do?
So we're a professional services company. We help customers implement the tools and help them select the tools for their software development environment. And over the years, that's morphed into DevOps. So we focus more on the dev than we do the ops, but there's crossover that we do things on the ops side as well. So, continuous deployment and continuous delivery is pretty much as far as we'll typically go on the ops side. But we're helping people with Jira, with not so much Bamboo anymore, but pipelines, CI/CD tools. Any type of development and improvement or productivity tools. So your code review tools. We used to do a lot of stuff with Crucible and Fisheye, and it's still in the mix, but it's not. There's not a huge calling for that. The customers that are using it well and don't require a lot of support.
Right. Until they get kicked out.
Until they get kicked out, yes.
So, what's the difference between a professional services, how you said it, and I guess what's more commonly, at least that I'm more commonly known as, a MSP, managed service provider?
Mm-hmm. So we don't necessarily manage the services for them. So the big difference between an MSP and professional services is typically the customer has a pain point, and they're farming that out to have someone come in and help them with it. Sometimes it's defined, sometimes we have to help them define it, but it's normally going in and for the last 3 years, a lot of it has been cloud migrations for Atlassian. So a managed service provider wouldn't necessarily do that. Sometimes they do, but normally what they're doing is they're taking over the services for the customer and they're providing those services back.
So they're like in-house Jira admins, versus you come in and help their existing Jira admins get through a problem.
So we don't necessarily expect to be at one customer for a extended length of time. Sometimes our contracts are a year plus, but normally they come in under 3 months. And so a given consultant for Release Team would work at anywhere between 5 and 10, maybe even north of 10 customers per year. And sometimes these customers are bringing us in for part-time work, and so we would have a consultant work on multiple engagements at the same time. But usually it's dedicated one-on-one.
That's such an interesting model, because it's one that worries me a lot. It keeps me up at night, right? Because it's like I always worry of what happens when the well runs dry.
Yeah, well, you definitely need to be on top of things and making sure that we call it playing consultant Tetris. And so you have your customers, and then you have your customers are the holes down the bottom of the Tetris board, and the consultants are the ones that you're trying to plug into the right holes, and you're trying to minimize downtime between engagements, and trying to keep your overall utilization rate at a particular percentage that you're comfortable with. So,
right, because one thing we were talking about team was the difference between salaried versus just contracting out your contractors, right?
mm-hmm.
And so I guess if you don't have a client for a particular week or a month, then you're still kind of on the hook, versus if you had contractors,
Mhm.
they'd come back online as soon as the work started again.
Yeah, that's a big difference between if you're an independent contractor, and you're farming yourself out there, either on an app or or through different headhunting companies. When the work stops, your salary stops, or your wage goes away, and any benefits that you may have through that. But if you attach yourself to a consulting company like Release Team, and there's many others out there like us, a lot of other Atlassian partners, you're typically salaried with full benefits, and it's up to the company to keep you busy, and keep you
Yeah.
employed. Yeah.
So then there's this kind of a T-shaped employee versus a pie-shaped employee. Have you heard of those?
Oh, I know what a T-shaped employee is.
I was
I
thinking the
don't know if
pie
I
is
want
like
to ask about a pie-shaped
well,
employee.
the pie shape basically just starts adding an extra leg, right? You have, instead of just having one skill set, you have a couple
Oh,
more. So do your teams, like, are they expected to know Atlassian and GitLab and GitHub and all the rest of the DevOps tools, or do you kind of have silos of the different
so
groups?
it's kind of in between that. They're not necessarily silos. I do have a dedicated team for my Atlassian work. Um, However, everyone's expected to cross train into at least one other discipline, whether it be or vendor solution. So GitHub and GitLab are two that it's nice to have. So if the Jira work is not as uh, forthcoming in a particular quarter, GitLab or GitHub would be, or maybe it's Jenkins or Travis CI, or Argo, or any of those other CI or CD tools. So it's good for everyone to be well rounded. So I guess that's kind of more of a pie type person. It's because
Yeah.
they're rounded like a pie.
So I'm assuming when you started releasing, right, and as we come into 2004 timeframe when Atlassian started coming on to your radar, at what point, like, did you do the Atlassian administration or consulting? And I guess the first question is, did you ever do it yourself
I
versus
have,
did you
and
hire directly from day one?
yeah, I currently do a number of engagements myself. I try to be the owner and not do the engagements, but a number of customers like to pull me back in.
Pull you
So
back
I
in.
am actually doing a Jira, Bitbucket, and Confluence engagement right now.
And so at what point then did you know that you're like, okay, I need to go start hiring a team? Like I need to start building a
Oh,
team.
from day one. So when I first founded Release Team in '99, I started with a group of 11 people.
Wow, that's a really
And
big group to get started with.
most of them I recruited from my previous companies, that I had been the manager for, and I was able to pull some of that talent, or those people knew of other people, and
Mhm.
so I did that. When we originally started, we were a Colorado only company, and we founded in '99, and two major things happened right after
Yeah,
we got.
Y2K being one.
Well, actually
Where
three.
it's
You want
not a
to
bug, it's a
include.
feature.
Yeah. So yeah, we were immediately faced with Y2K concerns, but then 9/11 happened, and then the dot-com burst happened. So all three of those, within a year and a half of us starting, maybe 2 years, and so that crew of 11 people shrunk down to five, and then we had to grow again from there. And we've had the consulting is feast or famine. And so you go through these phases, and we partner with enough people that we hope that as long as the entire market with all the verticals don't have a famine at the same time, then we can maneuver the ship through the storm.
So what excites you the most about the future of Atlassian? Like, where do you see Atlassian making changes to the product, introducing new products, sunsetting products? Like, how do you strategize your business to react to the changes that Atlassian makes to the ecosystem?
So I'm fairly excited about what Atlassian's been talking about at Teams. I was hoping to be more excited, but overall, I'm upbeat. I'll give it that. Um, I don't want to throw in on the bandwagon and just talk about AI, but I do think that it's very important to Atlassian on how they pull off the AI, and I haven't seen anything I dislike yet. Um, the consolidation of the products, I think, makes a lot of sense. I've had a soapbox topic about JWM since it was created,
Introduced.
introduced. Yeah, you know, I think where they were going with it made a lot of sense, but I think the execution made no sense. I do think merging it back in, it makes a lot of sense, and really focusing on just creating, templatizing this. It's not even a word, but yeah, making the special templates for the different, groups that could use it, and just keep it inside Jira.
No,
Concerned about pricing though.
yeah, pricing is a big concern of mine too, because you're essentially going from $10 to like $16 in
Mhm.
a nutshell. I did want to peel back a little bit then, right? Because you're a consultant and you depend on people. I don't know how to word this politely, right? But like people's miseries is your good fortune, right? In a nutshell. If you probably don't use such dumb words like me, but
That's okay. I can't pronounce half the English language anyway. So
anyways, like the point I'm trying to make, like, is when people get stuck, that's when they call you,
yes,
right?
yes,
Now,
we do better the more fires that we put out.
right. But Atlassian to me seems like they're trying to almost not have as many fires with these templates and by making it easier. What are
Well,
your thoughts on that?
as a tool vendor should. So one of the repeating things we've heard from tool vendors, I can trace this all the way back to my early 90s, is that their tool doesn't require that much overhead or administrative support, and every vendor says this, and then it comes out, well, that's not necessarily true. But it is a big concern of mine. Not necessarily this is kind of a smaller part of the bigger picture, the whole JWM stuff, going back to into Jira, but it's more the push to cloud. I have to have a different skill set for my Atlassian consultants if they're on-prem versus off-prem. And I don't want off-prem cloud. I don't want my cloud consultants losing those skills that they used to need to be able to manage the data centers of the
The
world.
on-prem, yeah. Because
Um,
like me, that's usually why Ronnie and I get along so well, because I'm primarily mainly only cloud, and he's primarily only data center. So we always complement each other's skills very well because again, I spent so much 99.999% of my time is cloud.
Yeah. Well, and it's a different skill set, right? Because you don't have to worry about databases, you don't have to worry about OS upgrades, you don't have,
Firewall.
yeah, firewalls. You don't have to worry about some sort of third party add-on that that's or dependency that is needed to connect
Yeah.
to an Oracle backend, and all this stuff is no longer a concern for you or the customers. However, I have to have my Atlassian consultants understand that. They also have to be a part system administrator, a part DBA, to be able to maintain not only the Atlassian tools on prem, but the other tools that we support, that are non SaaS. And,
So
and so that's a big skill set that I don't want my consultants to lose. However, I may not need all my consultants to have those in the future.
so I guess digging a little bit deeper though, like what, and I don't want you to like maybe disclose your master plan, your 3-step master plan, like an Elon Musk plan, right? But I'm assuming that internally you're being able to have like request types slash portals being made from using AI. I'm assuming Rovo is going to change the game quite a bit with respect to how do we administer Jira and then all these templates, right? Like
Mhm.
you got to be thinking longer term and going, okay, so what does the Atlassian ecosystem look like for release team? And like, do we ever have to pivot off of Atlassian? Do we focus more on architecture? Do we focus more on like teamwork? Like, what does that look like?
Well, we've always focused a lot on architecture, and we're a DevOps consulting company, so Atlassian covers a big a portion of that picture, but it doesn't cover all of it. There's certain disciplines in DevOps that Atlassian just doesn't have a solution for, and it doesn't look like they're going to. Nothing that we've seen in announcements or roadmaps would point that they're creating like a binary artifact.
Yeah, but doesn't that worry you then a little bit? Because I feel like Atlassian is pivoting away from its roots of being centered around software development, and it's just being like almost like a Monday where it's like a tool for all.
Yeah, that's definitely the message that we've been hearing, probably for the last 4 or 5 years, is that they want to be, in the team collaboration business and not necessarily the software business, which I don't think they're doubling down on that this year. I haven't heard that as strong as I've heard it in the past. And moving JWM back into Jira, it kind of signals a little bit about that. But yeah, I share your concerns. I'm always worried about all my vendors, and where are we going as a professional service company in the future? When we started out, it was like 99% IBM Rational, and then we slowly picked up HP and BMC tools over the years, and then the list of partners just exploded. We partner with about 40 different vendors right now.
I was gonna say, yeah, there's
a lot of them out
there. Yeah, there's at least a few years ago, there was a famous the table of elements, but for DevOps tools.
Yeah,
right?
Digital AI put that out. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of DevOps tools, right? So I think it's an interesting perspective, right? I think, I don't know, I don't have a release team like company, right? But I almost feel like at one point you might need to drop release from the title.
Well, yeah, we considered changing the name back when we dropped IBM Rational. And dropping is a hard word. We still do IBM Rational work, but it's still the ClearCase, ClearQuest stuff, and it's very few and far between. In fact, I just had a consultant retire last year, and he never did anything other than ClearCase. So, that was a long. So I used to have I used to joke saying that IBM Rational put my kids through college, and I just recently, I think at Teams, heard someone use my line, but used it for Jira. Jira put their kids through college. And I was like, Jira's been around for 20 years now.
Yeah, no,
close to it.
I think a lot of people forget that. But another question, or put the thought differently, right? Similar type of probe that I'm trying to do here, but trying not to forget what I was doing, right? But we see Atlassian making a shift to more team-centric processes and methods, right? Less agile, less scrum, less story points, less epics, less what I love, and more of what just works for you. Mm-hmm. Do you see a similar shift with like GitLab or GitHub, or are these like staying true to the core?
No, I see it go, well, especially with GitLab, they're going completely the opposite direction.
They're doubling down.
They're doubling down
developers.
Yeah. Well, they just released that the new add-on. The Enterprise Agile Planning. Yeah, it just rolls off the tongue. I really wish I'd come up with a better name of
Enterprise
that.
Agile EAP.
Yeah, EAP. Yeah, and so if you hear EAP, you think of something completely different. But anyway, they just came out with that, and it's pretty much got everything you need to run an agile project, and it's all self-contained inside GitLab. I didn't want this to become a GitLab commercial, but they're one of our big partners, and I'm pretty happy with the direction that they're going.
But I think it's an important thing to talk about, because what happens to a company, like if I was a software development company and I'm like the CTO of this company, I would then be less incentivized to go with Atlassian, given the changes they're making, and go more towards someone like GitLab.
Yeah, if you were a software development manager, that makes perfect sense. And I think that is one of the reasons why during the cloud migrations, we didn't see a lot of customers continue to use Bitbucket from on-prem to the cloud. And I think Bitbucket Cloud is outstanding. It's got all sorts of great features in it, but a lot of customers didn't take that journey because they didn't feel that Atlassian was a software development first company anymore. And I don't think they meant that message to get out there, but they didn't necessarily help themselves with how long they really didn't invest in Bitbucket until it hit the cloud.
But then do you think Atlassian's making the right move here then, right? Because obviously if a bank, construction, nursing, all these different genres,
Verticals. Yeah.
businesses,
Yeah, we call them verticals in the business world, Alex.
Yeah. If all these different verticals can now all of a sudden now harness the power of Jira, is it better to go after that basically blue ocean, or is it better to stay in this red ocean that GitLab and GitHub are in?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting direction that they're taking, and it seems to have been timed about the time that they went public. So someone gave them the advice, and I think this was good advice, that Jira for net new customers. That means customers that have never used Jira before. There's not many out there. You're basically saturated the market with Jira, and that's pretty much a true statement. Very few customers that could use Jira in a software development world weren't using Jira. Atlassian just killed it on that market. But now they have investors, and investors want to see things expand. And you can either expand in one of two ways: create new products for your existing customers that you've already saturated, so you have to upsell.
Raise the bar there, yeah.
Or you find new customers. And so JSM and JWM made perfect sense for the tactic that they were going for. And as a professional services company, I like my customers to be software development organizations, because that's what we have deep knowledge in. But if I have people asking me to help out with JSM, and they're a tire company or a library, which we've actually had libraries call us, and we've stood up JSM for them. I'm perfectly happy to keep my Atlassian staff busy helping out on non-software development teams.
But this is a new skill set, though, right? Because I see this all the time when I'm working with teams where I'm like, a sprint, and they're like, well, what's a sprint? And we're like, okay, well, maybe you don't need a sprint. We got a Kanban board. Don't worry, I got you covered, right? And then they're like, well, what's an epic? I'm like, well, that's a great point, because you don't care about agile, you don't care about these things.
So most of these other teams, I kind of like to make the comparison to like a deli. They just want a customer to come in, pull a number, wait in line, get called, get served, and be done. So they don't need agile. They don't need tickets. I mean, they need tickets, but they don't need sprints or epics or stories or anything like that. So something like JWM and JSM work fine, because give them a Kanban board, and that's all they need.
That's all they need. But now that begs the question: now that they're merging work management with software, they didn't make it simpler. They added everything.
Yeah. So the price is the first stumbling block on that. You have to get over the concern that it costs more, but then it's all relevant. What were they using before? So if in case
spreadsheets,
they're the smart sheets or Excel spreadsheets or maybe sticky notes or email. You have no idea what they're currently using, and the less sophisticated team, the more likelihood that they weren't using a system.
But now, is there value in taking these non-traditional tech verticals, right, that are all of a sudden being a target of marketing from Atlassian, right? Is there value in engineering their process?
So it depends, which is my favorite consulting answer. But yeah, it depends on a customer by customer basis. I would say most of the time it does. However, like when JWM first came out, in the first few marketing slides that we saw to try to entice us as a partner to sell this to other companies, what was offsetting the most was they were using examples of, like, the HR department was a very typical example. Or marketing department or sales department. And there's some fairly very vocal people that will tell you never use Confluence and Jira to run a sales team. And but I would 100% agree with that. There's certain teams that it's going to be a very tough sell to convince them to use JWM or the new templates inside Jira that is now JWM. Up against, because they've had some sort of solution for decades. So like, I'm not an HR expert. I hire someone to deal with that, so I don't have to. But an HR department probably has something like a PeopleSoft from Oracle or whoever owns PeopleSoft these days. I'm not sure. And they've had decades to fine tune their solution for the HR department, and then here we come as a partner trying to convince them to use JWM. Of course, we won't do that anymore, but and so we have to sit there and try to compete with a tool that we have no insight into. And they
Right.
they may have the PeopleSoft life going on, and they love that tool, and then we're trying to convince them to use what truly is a software development project planning tool to replace something they've used for years.
But I guess where I was trying to get to, like, so I just got my bathroom remodeled about a month ago, and the guys, when they came over, they're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I teach people how to use Jira on the internet." And then like the next natural question is like, "Well, what's
That's
Jira?"
Jira.
And then they're like, I was like, "Oh, it's just a project management tool." And they're like, "Project? What kind of projects?" And I'm like, "Well, it allows you to basically organize your team when you have tasks, right? And if you're dividing the work and somebody's responsible for X, Y, and Z, you can see who's doing X, Y, and Z and where X, Y, and Z are
Yep.
in whatever life cycle you have, right?" And so the guy's like, "Can you show me how you would do it for my business, for a construction company, remodeling bathrooms?" I'm like, "Yeah, give me a minute." And so I like get my
So
laptop
then
on,
you
like,
jump to Trello, right? And
no, I did not. I totally just like jumped into a Jira Kanban, and I'm like, "Look, this is what you would do. Like, you have your contractors on, you custom fields, quick workflow, right?" And the guy's like, "This would be awesome. Like, this is exactly what we need, because we have so many people working for us. Like, we just never know who's doing what."
Mhm.
And so I can see, like, but I can see the value in me teaching them kind of like how to think like an engineer, or like how to at least think like a software company, and maybe boost their process of efficiencies. Because one of the things that I normally see, and maybe because my wife and I were big nerds, right? We're both engineers, and our favorite thing to do is to go out, right? Restaurants, places, and just see all the inefficiencies in the way work happens.
Yeah, it's a bad habit. I do that too.
And I can just see, like, man, if these people just knew the way, right? Like, if they knew how to put like Jira in, or a lean process in, like, it would
Mhm.
just drastically change their business. But do you guys see, like, from a releasing perspective, right? Do you then see a shift in how you're gonna market, or trying to appeal to these non-traditional, non-tech
Well,
people?
yeah, marketing shifts all the time. So that doesn't necessarily scare me or overly concern me. But yes, and to go back to a point you made earlier, it is a different skill set, because the skill set is no longer setting up Jira for the software department. It is um, you know uh, uh, understanding the new client and what their concerns and needs are, and tailoring a solution to fit that. And not every consultant has that. I would say that a lot of consultants in our field, can definitely understand any software development, and find nuances that are different for that group versus another group, and fine tune Jira for them. But like we did a very big contract not too long ago for a city's transportation department, and the majority of the projects were understanding where all the vehicles were and what state of maintenance they were in, and as well as where our
Right.
part, what's our supply chain look like, and things like that. And that's a completely different project than what you would set up for
But
software.
that, I think that's exactly where Atlassian is trying to gear
It is.
towards, right?
Yeah.
Being, because your clientele, you think of every city in the world.
Yeah.
You just 100x your customer base.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And, you've got all these different companies that, and the nice thing that we see is, as far as, and a lot of this is JSM, not necessarily, JWM, because JSM just works great for these type of organizations. So we never really even had to, go look at JWM for them. But they may not need a lot of licenses. That's a net new logo for Atlassian, so they're happy. The investors are happy. They love counting net new logos. I prefer to count revenue, um, but if we roll something out to a transportation department, they may need 10 licenses for the entire city. And we're talking JSM, because they probably only have under 10 agents that are actually going to manage anything. But the professional services that go along with it equal some of the professional services we do for customers with 2,000 licenses. So for us, we're happy to to take the smaller deals where prior to JSM. We would market to only the enterprise level customers, because those are the customers that have the needs and have the
Yeah.
larger rollouts that need consulting services.
But then that still takes me back to maybe not the name release team, but your tagline is like the DevOps consultants, right?
Oh, that's changed multiple times over the years. So
Okay.
taglines are easy to change.
Well, because like I'm trying to say, like, hey, if I'm this like the CEO of this construction company, I'm like, okay, I'm sold on Jira. I want Jira, but I don't know where to start. And I start looking up Valantis and Valiantis and everybody else, right? It's like, well, holy moly, I just got overwhelmed, right? It's so
Yeah,
much. And
there's so many of them, and depending on what add-ons you have, the price of Jira can become very expensive quickly.
So yeah, so it's interesting to see that maybe there's a new market or a new opportunity for professional service providers to maybe tap into a more non-technical role, because Atlassian clearly wants to build that market share. And I definitely 100% agree with the point that you're saying of like Atlassian is clearly on a road to increase customer base, because I was looking at their last Q1 report, because I actually, believe it or not, don't own any Atlassian stock.
I don't either. Yeah.
And I was like, I got a couple $100. Let me buy a share or two. And I was looking at just like an analysis reports, and they're like, Atlassian has plateaued. Like they have saturated their market, and we don't see a road. Atlassian hasn't published like a plan for how do we like double growth over the next 5 years. And so growth is definitely got to be in the top of Mike and Anu's head right now.
Yeah, I would assume it's always been. And I scratch my head on a number of the acquisitions they've made over the years, and some of them made sense, a lot haven't made sense. And
the Loom one was a head scratcher for me, but it's been working out.
Has it?
I think. I'm not a big Loom user, never have been.
I never heard of it until the acquisition, but then
Right.
I don't produce videos, and that's not a world that I'm in. So,
well, videos is my world, right?
no.
But there's value in a picture's worth 1,000 words, and a video's got to be worth like 1,000,000 words, right? And what they showed on stage of being able to replicate a bug, and then have the Loom video make the ticket and do the transcription, do the steps to reproduce. That I think is powerful, right? Because you lose so much in the telephone game.
Yeah.
And
I agreed with the message that they displayed. I haven't seen it in reality yet. I did go to the booth and I sat through their on-prem demo there, or not on-prem, but at the conference the on-site demo, and some of the things that they were trying to drive home in that demo, I'm not sure that's going to resonate with maybe the younger generation. It might. But one of the things that they were pitching, and I don't want to pick on them too much, was that you don't need staff meetings anymore. Everyone can record their portion of the staff meeting. Yeah, and then post it a Confluence page, and then you can go watch. No one's going to do that. No one wants to record themselves.
Yeah, it takes a different, like, I I have over 600 videos published.
Mhm.
If you fold in the Jira Life, I have well over 700 videos that I've published, right? And it's still weird for me to yell into a black hole
Yeah.
every single day.
I'm not going to be comfortable doing that. I wouldn't want to record myself and then send it to my employees to hear the the CEO message of the day or week or whatever. I don't hold a lot of meetings in the company, but there's a lot of meetings that happen through different combinations of employees. But I don't see Loom replacing them.
Yeah. It
I
was almost
think it's
kind
a
of,
neat use case, but I don't see it actually panning out.
yeah, I'm really excited about the bug one, but definitely I wouldn't
The
like
bug
that
one makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
because what you were just describing is almost as bad as when COVID hit that people moved their daily stand-ups into Slack messages. I'm like, this
Yeah.
defeats the purpose of doing a daily scrum.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like you can't asynchronously do your daily scrum. Like it's just you. I get that you can be online and do it via like a virtual call, but you gotta read the room, and you can't read a room
Yeah.
when you're asynchronously
Yeah,
watching a video.
without video is hard enough, and then trying to do it when everyone's not physically in the meeting at the same time is.
Right. So novel, I guess it'll maybe be a novelty, but
No,
well,
I do like the use case of recording the bugs or what they see, because that's that takes up a lot of my time. I have a remote salesperson, and they can't get into Salesforce, and they just tell me it's broken. Well, it doesn't help me try to troubleshoot it for them, or any of my other consultants that might be able to jump on and help them with the Salesforce problem. But a video, it's like, well, you're clicking the wrong button. What are you
my
trying?
favorite is like I'll get a picture of someone like I can't access Jira and I see the little door up in the top right corner. I'm like, you should try logging in.
Yeah. You haven't logged in, or that's not Jerry. You're trying to order pizza.
Yeah, no, yeah, I love it. Like, especially with screenshots, right? Like, I get so many screenshots on a day-to-day basis. And they're like, fix this problem. I'm like, they give me a friggin' tiny little screenshot, and I'm like,
Mhm.
guys, I need
Yeah.
which board are we in? What issue type? Are you even logged in? Are we even in Jira?
I have a work colleague that I've been working with for about 30 years. And every time he has an issue that he needs help with, he gives you like 8% of the details to help him. And then as soon as you jump to a conclusion, he blows you up. Well, of course, that's not the problem, because X, Y, well, X, Y, and Z would have been interesting input to have to help you, and this Loom would maybe solve all that. Um,
Yeah, no, you
he'd find
definitely
another
need
way
the
to.
context. Yeah, the context helps so much because I not to toot my own horn, right? But I can walk into pretty much any room right now, look at a Jira, and give you a diagnostics like in a minute or two, right? Like it's quick because I know the behavior. Heck, I sometimes I'm stopping people as they're asking me the question because I already have the answer.
Well, that brings up an interesting thing, or reminds me of something. On the Atlassian community a couple weeks ago, someone posted a question on how to do something in automations, and it was something that would have been very simple to do in a transition. And he only wanted it to be happen. Only wants it in one project and one issue type, and it's like, well, you're talking a transition. Yes, we could do that in automation, but then we'd have to put so many, guardrails on the automation that we could have just done this in the transition. So,
Mhm.
and I'm kind of seeing this as well on our clients that are on cloud versus on prem. Is they want to do they default to automations first, where things could have just been easier done, or traditionally we didn't have automation, so you would have done it in a condition or validator or something like that. So where do you draw that line?
I I like to hear the problem and then leverage my intimate skills of Jira to come up with the best solution for that problem. Because, like you said,
Mhm.
it's really a crapshoot sometimes, right? Like you can go, there is no silver bullet. But what does annoy me the most is when somebody comes to me with a question, but they already have the answer. I'm like,
Yeah, I
but
don't like that either. Yeah.
and I'm like, you are asking the Jira expert for help,
Yeah.
but clearly you don't want my opinion. So then why did you even ask me
Yeah. Yeah.
for help? Like I've gotten a couple of those.
Yeah.
But in general, like I like to do whatever's best for that specific use case. And I think Bill Gates said it once, right? Like I hire the laziest engineer because he's going to find the most efficient way of doing it. And yeah, so the answer to your question is whatever is the easiest way on me as an admin to arrive at the same destination.
Yeah. Well,
Now,
I usually look at it, I try to future proof things first. And, I guess if I have a major gripe recently about Atlassian, it's like they're making it hard to future proof things. So if I try to find the simplest solution, but then I also want it not to blow up on us if Atlassian changes something.
yeah. See, but then maybe I should answer your question differently, because if I had to come up with a somebody asked me that question, right? That we're using it as an example. My initial reaction, or if I was like this, I was working with this team member, wouldn't be to jump to the answer, but would be to challenge why they want that to begin with.
Yes, I like to do that too.
Right? Because the moment you need to add any kind of complexity, like that's the biggest red flag for me to figure out like what's going, like why do you feel like you need something like this?
Mhm.
Right? And it's usually like a trust problem or a communication problem, or they just don't know anything problem.
Mhm.
Trying to
Or
be nice.
or the worst is like we get a lot of those questions right when we're migrating people from tool A to something from Atlassian. And then they're like, "Can you make Jira work exactly like our old tool?" And the answer is no, you don't want that.
Right.
You chose Jira for specific reasons, and let's
I,
take a look at what your old tool did, and if you had configured it or um, you know
yeah,
modified it to do
I
something.
just I just had that with someone because they were coming from Trello to Jira, and they're like, I just want to replicate Trello inside of Jira. I'm like, but you don't, because Trello is a linear system. It's singular,
Mhm.
single level. Jira is multidimensional. You have a hierarchy. You have issue types
Mhm.
that have a parent-child relationship that can really complement each other. We have fields that can complement each other.
Yeah.
Our statuses and our columns is such a different thing than how they fundamentally work inside of Trello.
Mhm.
And so it doesn't always make sense to
Yeah.
just copy paste.
Yeah. No, I like Trello, but I never really saw the complete need for it. It's a great little to do task thing, but when I put on my software development hat, or my manager hat, I'm like, well, Trello's too freeform. Anyone
But
can do
but
anything. And
that's what Jira is becoming.
yeah, that's a
It's
little,
bringing us
but
full
at
speed.
least in behind the scenes, there's still audit logs
For
and
now, though, right? Like I just
oh,
feel in the
quick
direction that
further.
Atlassian is going in, they're making it so that Jira can do anything for
Mhm,
any industry, for any business, for any vertical, as we said earlier, right?
mhm.
But then you end up with there's chaos, there's madness in this chaos.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a small little anecdote. My entire career is defense, right? I grew up Boeing, Northrops, Raytheons, and I always hated it. I hated working in the defense companies because you could never do anything creatively without the customer endorse having a requirement, right? Like if you came up with like a cool way to solve a problem, like great, but there's no requirement for it, so you got to solve it the way we've already paid for it. And it
Yeah,
always,
yeah, that happens. Defense, I am very deep in the defense as well, and my background in the '80s was the military, so
right.
I've been in it for a while as well. It's a unique environment. Nothing happens quickly. Everything takes way too many approvals for people that aren't really looking or caring about the approval. But then every so often you work with some great people that do care. So
Yeah.
it's a mixed bag.
It's
Um,
There's a lot of structure, which I appreciate, because then I quit. I quit the defense world and I went to a 300-person company. And I know you've mocked me for 300 people is not a startup.
yeah, Mannered is not a startup.
But I went to a 300-person company, so I've intentionally left that startup. And everybody was a PhD in AI. Everybody was like a PhD in machine learning and vision, because these are self-driving robots that clean all the Walmarts and Sam's Clubs of the world and airports and whatnot, right? And what I witnessed, I was like, okay, I'm gonna lose that structure, all those rules, and we're gonna go to an innovative company that just does. But what I found was everybody wants to do. And you can't corral that herd,
Yeah, yeah.
because everybody, like the best example I saw was like when we would go to plan a sprint, I group everybody together, but then it's almost like if everybody tied a rope around their waist, and when I hit start sprint, they all went like this, and they all just fell because nobody can move together. It was the hardest thing. I'm like, I'm done with this too, because not having any rules is complete chaos.
Yes. You have to find
And
that.
having too many rules is too chaotic.
For the most part, I'll defend the defense industry. That the majority of the rules make sense, and there's a reason for them. How they're implemented usually doesn't make sense, and it's just painful, and it drives people away from the industry. And some integrators do things better than the others. Like the majority of ones that you named are all ones that are current clients of ours, and I would say that for the most part, their projects that are successful for reasons. And the ones that are just not successful are the opposite. They've overthought the rules, or they're following rules other people put in place years ago, and it may not have been the last group of people that were in there. It was like 4 or 5 generations of developers that set a rule, and nobody understands how to change the rule.
Right. Yep.
And then they'll use the excuse that, oh, it's in the contract that we have to follow the rule. And then when you track that down, you find out there's the contract never specified how you did this, and you could redefine it at any moment. So
right. Definitely.
In a moment, in defense's months. Yeah.
Definitely pays out to be on your own and kind of be the consultant, which just kind of the part that I like. So anyways, I know we have run out of time here. So Shawn, thank you very much. We didn't even get to ask the champions or the partners or the creators. So we may have to do a round 2 here.
All right.
At some point, because I do want to, I'm curious what the game plan is for being a content creator. Where do you see that maybe with your own personal brand, with Release Team's brand? What's the play there? So
no, my personal brand and Release Team's personal brand is the same. So awesome. Anything I do is something that my employer is saying.
So, unlike everybody else on Twitter says opinions are my own.
Yeah, my opinion is my company's opinion. Now, not all my employees agree, and that's why I like to have them as employees, because they call me out on my stuff, but then I can call them out on theirs. So,
well, you're a great boss, Shawn. From what I can see, I want to personally thank you for Bob and Rodney and lending them to me as much as you do.
Don't blame me for Bob and Rodney.
I appreciate again the support that you have for this channel, for the Jira Life, for everything we're doing here. I think it's amazing to see it's an outlier, right? I wouldn't see many folks that are in the Atlassian community that are this invested in not only just like, again, you own 2/3 of the Jira Life.
Well, not directly, yeah.
Yeah, not directly, but in a sense, you.
And I stay away. I don't harass them or anything. Well, no, I do harass them in chat, but
all in good heart.
Yes.
But anyways, Shawn, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time here, and we'll see you for a part 2 then.
All right. Have fun on your summer of Atlassian.